Welcome to the New Mexico Suncast. Randy Mascorella is the Executive Director of Special Olympics New Mexico. Randy, I met you a few years ago interviewing you on the radio. The things that you do are amazing. I want to read the mission. The mission of Special Olympics is to provide year-round sports training, not just a summer event, and athletic competition in a variety of Olympic-type sports for children and adults, which I didn't know that either. A lot of folks in your program have intellectual disabilities, giving them continuing opportunities to develop physical fitness. That's important for all of us. Demonstrate courage, experience joy, and share gifts, skills, and friendships with their families and other people. And this really is a community thing. Your website is SONM, so for Special Olympics New Mexico, sonm.org. I love it. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about Special Olympics, because I just mentioned a bunch of things. Sometimes people think, well, Special Olympics is just a summer thing, or maybe it's just an every 4-year thing. This is a year-round organization taking care of people.
This is a year-round sports organization which offers 12 sports to children and adults with intellectual disabilities. We are a competitive sports organization. So our athletes train. Then after they train 6 to 8 weeks, they compete at a competition with other athletes in their area of the state. And once they've competed there, they automatically qualify for a statewide competition. And those 12 sports offer them the opportunity to choose what they want to participate in. Mm-hmm. So most people think of us as the track meet because that's probably our largest in terms of corporate support and volunteer support. But in reality, we travel the state and we actively participate in 12 sports.
Randy, how did you end up in New Mexico?
I ended up here, actually, I was an assistant women's basketball coach at Iowa State University, and I get a call from the athletic director saying that he needed a coach to welcome 3,000 Special Olympic athletes into the football stadium for their state summer games. Would I be interested in doing that? And I told him I would be happy to do that, but what was a Special Olympic athlete? Now, mind you, this was in the 1980s. His response was, well, retarded people. I wasn't fond of the word, but my response to him was, no, I don't. But I would be happy to welcome them to our university. So that day, I decided I better go see what these athletes were all about. My first stop that day was at the track. I walked into the infield and I watched. And I watched athletes challenged with intellectual disabilities, and not being from the world of disability, I saw things that I had not seen in sport that were profoundly interesting to me. A lot of them were competing in street clothes, and I wondered why. Why? I saw athletes who struggled to stay in a lane when they ran. I saw athletes who ran and waved at the crowd as they were running. I saw athletes who were faster in their 100 meters than the athletes I were coaching. And I just saw a variety of abilities, different disabilities. And I watched a tremendous celebration once the race was completed, which made me think they don't get to do this a lot, because regardless of what place they came in, they celebrated with everything that was in them. And I just saw an amount of courage in a lot of these guys that I had not witnessed before. I saw celebration for the opportunity to do it. I saw what I thought was probably the purest form of sport I had seen for a long, long time, and I loved it. And so I gladly welcomed them and then volunteered every opportunity I had.
So you came to New Mexico and you've been the executive director for how long?
33 years now.
How's your life changed in that time?
Well, life change in that the longer you are in a nonprofit organization and you lead a nonprofit organization, you really give your life to that, I mean, it is my life. It's my life, to be honest with you. And I feel honored to have been chosen to be able to do that. And I've found that sport is sport. And one of the greatest assets in our organization, in my opinion, are the people that I work with. And, I've been able to build a team of people who are passionate about what we do. And I love this team and what they accomplish. We do a lot with a little, and I'm very proud of what they're able to do with maybe not as many resources as a lot of other Special Olympic programs across the country. And I have learned to love our state.
Would you be mad at me if I called out our state a little bit?
Call it out.
Because I think that there are resources here. And one of the reasons we wanted you on the program is just to have our viewers know a little bit more about what New Mexico Special Olympics is. How can businesses and individuals support you financially? And of course, we're going to spend a lot of our time today talking about people that volunteer.
Yeah. Well, you start over in a nonprofit organization financially every year. So you start from square one and you prepare a budget and you do everything you can to get individuals and corporations to support that. We always want more, right? Because the more we have, the more we can do. And so,
Are there people being turned away because you don't have enough?
We provide, no, I will tell you, we will find a way. All right. We can't turn anybody away from this sports organization. They're turned away enough. All right. So, we have figured out how to make possible any athlete who wants to participate can. But we surely, invite, not only corporate people to give us dollars, but their employees to come and volunteer with us. So they are invited into maybe a world they had never been involved in before. And then individuals, you want to make sure when you give money to a nonprofit organization that your money is being used to do what the mission is. And that comes with a tremendous responsibility on our part to be good stewards of those dollars. I think people are nervous now about giving money because where's it going to go and what's it really doing? And, we go through an annual audit and we remain very accountable for the dollars that we spend and where they're being spent. And so, we always invite participation financially. Love it. Can't have enough of it.
Can giving be done on your website?
Giving can be done on the website. I kind of like the thought of, meeting with the people, getting to know the people and why are they giving. We do direct mail, and so a lot of people give that way. People, upon occasion and not often, we've gotten estate gifts. Some who have had Special Olympic athletes in their families, some who to this day, I don't know why they gave. And I'm always so sad because I think I want to thank them while they're alive for considering us, but sometimes you just don't get that chance. So there are so many ways to give to make sure that we get those dollars. Online, come in, send a check, there's just tons of participate in our special events. There's just tons of ways.
I'm going to share with you something that is a little bit embarrassing, but I just want to be candid. So I've seen people with various disabilities, people in wheelchairs, maybe people with Down syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And when I've walked up to them or down the sidewalk, they're coming one direction, I'm going the other. It's almost like I'm afraid of them.
Yeah.
And I don't make eye contact and smile. I do now, but for many years I didn't.
Yeah.
And I do that now because you shared with me several years ago that, look, these are people. They just want you to smile and acknowledge them. And coach us a little bit about that.
I think fears, unless you have someone with an intellectual disability in your family or you have a neighbor, you're not familiar with not only the disability, but you don't know how to respond to the person. Mm-hmm. And that's where fear comes in because they may appear a little different. And I don't think that's uncommon, to be quite honest with you. Mm-hmm. I think people need to realize that when you have an intellectual disability, more than not, you go through life not being invited, not being included, not necessarily having a lot of non-disabled friends. You actually may live your life isolated. And so when you finally have the opportunity to engage and learn about the person, the disability tends to take second place because you're engaging with a person. And as people, in my opinion, these are the most wonderful people on the face of our earth.
Yes.
I mean, they are just so very kind and so pure in so many ways. And not that they're perfect by any means. They're stubborn. They're in many ways just like the rest of us. But they've not ever been accepted or respected or valued. So when you engage with them, a whole new world comes to both of you. And I tell people this all the time, and I think I've probably told you that. When you walk into our playing fields and you watch our athletes compete, you're going to see lives change right in front of your face. But don't be surprised if the life that changes the most is your own, because they are great teachers, number one. I tell companies this all the time. You send us your employees, and for 1 week, I can promise you they're going to be a lot nicer. They're going to be a lot more thankful for what they have, and they're going to see the world a little differently for at least a week. So, our athletes are just a gift. And when we learn to see them as people and not necessarily as the world of disability, they have that gift. We value. We need to value.
I don't want to leave the personal profile of Randy Mascorella yet. We're going to get much more into Special Olympics, your schedule, when volunteers are needed. We'll continue to reiterate how you give. But you mentioned that Special Olympics is your life. Do you take a day to go to your favorite restaurant? Where would that be?
Well, I love the food here, and that didn't take long at all. So, the Midwest girl who didn't know red or green quickly became thankful for it and loved it. So I tend to love the local places in all the communities. And that's one thing about this job. You get to travel the state. And so I learn, it's taken me a few years, but I've learned the local places. And I love these local businesses, that prepare this food. So I can't say I have a favorite. I love them all. I can eat here. I love our state. And one of the things that I really love, I love the ditch banks. So I love the ditches. So when I first came and was younger, I'd run the ditches. And I learned the value of these ditches and what they bring to us in terms of agriculture and our culture and the necessity of having food being grown here. And so I've learned as I've traveled, the importance of the ditches. But I've also learned of the people on the ditches, because these ditches don't run through people's front yards, right? So when you run these ditches or you walk these ditch banks, you see most of the time people in their backyards or people on those ditches that have a reason to be on those ditches in terms of ranchers and what have you. And you get to engage with those people. So the ditches, in just my opinion, it's a beautiful part of what our culture is here. And I love that. So I spend a lot of time on the ditch banks.
I have a question here about what makes you smile, but I'm going to reword it. You've already smiled 100 times telling us everything that you like. Is there something that happens every year that when it happens just brings joy to you?
There's something that happens every day that brings joy to me. I mean, really, truly. And I feel tremendously blessed by that. I think as far back as I can remember, one of the most important things in my life, and sport had a lot to do with it. I got to do what I love to do, playing sports, but it's people. I hate to say this out loud and mean it, but I really have always enjoyed people. And so I get to be with people all the time, every day. And I just enjoy the heck out of that. Yeah. And not necessarily just people that I know, a lot of people that I don't know. And, and it makes my life much more meaningful. I remember my dad telling me one time, and I might have been like 5. He took me someplace and I didn't talk. And these were adults and they were talking to me and I didn't talk. So when we got home that night, he came into my room and he said to me, Randy, you really need to talk with people. When they talk to you, talk back with them. He said, you might like that. And I thought, and I was like 5 and I was like, okay. So I just did that. And I started to be able to talk to people. And I think it's what makes life live, the people.
Tell us about your Special Olympics schedule right now, because you have a lot going.
Yeah, we do. We have, so at the end of May, we have our state summer games at the University of New Mexico, and we compete in 4 different sports at those games. And those games are probably our largest in terms of number of volunteers because it's 4 sports. So we need a lot of help and we get a lot of help. because the companies that do give us money or the groups that call us a year in advance and say, I have this team and I'd like them to. So we get a lot of volunteers for that one.
We should mention team building and things that companies could volunteer for your program as kind of a team building exercise.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's a great team building exercise because you're being thrown into a world that most of the time you know nothing about. And so you're having to rely on each other. You don't know what you're going to get when you get there. I mean, it's sport, but it's sport and you don't know what you're going to get. So that's always just a great thing. But as soon as we finish the end of May, we jump into the next season, which is golf, softball, and aquatics. So, and here's where the need is. So we break our state into 6 different geographic areas. And so in order for those athletes, when they train, that first competition that they do is against those athletes in their geographic area of their state. That's when we need volunteers. So central New Mexico, we're the largest area. We'll have hundreds of athletes that will be competing in a sport, and we need volunteers for that. And we need volunteers who would consider coaching, because what we're seeing right now, post-COVID, we lost a lot of coaches who, for whatever the reason, didn't come back to our organization. So we had teams, but we didn't have coaches. And so they had to scramble, and we have athletes who aren't competing right now because we don't have enough coaches. Teams are maxed out and they can't take any more, so the nice thing about being a volunteer coach for Special Olympics, there is some training involved, and you do need to be certified, but there's always light at the end of the tunnel. So our seasons are 12 weeks. All right. So if you're coaching, you're practicing once, maybe twice a week. You're competing at an area level. You're competing at a state level 2 or 3 weeks after that, and then you're done. And so there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I think, there's a lot of people, they say, well, I don't know how to coach. I don't think I know enough about this. We will teach you. We will teach you what you need to know. And
talk about that process a little bit. So if we call 505-856-0342 and we want to volunteer, maybe there's 3 of us that work for a company, or maybe there's a women's group or a men's group at a church. They want to volunteer to help you for 12 weeks. They call the number. What happens?
First, if they want to just volunteer the day of the event, we send them to our volunteer coordinator, and she explains all that has to be done. If they want to coach and they want to be involved a little deeper, hands-on with the athletes for the season, we send them to our sports department. And then our director of coaches education lines it out. So first of all, you have to have a background check. Then you have to go and you have to take a test online. And then after you do that, you have to spend 10 hours with our athletes. And you have to have hands-on practical, and then you're certified. And so, but we take them through step by step by step by step.
People that have coached, I don't think I've thought about having I know some people with intellectual disabilities. Actually, I know parents with kids that have intellectual disabilities. I would say that I'm friends with one of those children, but not friends in the sense where I would see them a couple times a week. When I confess these things, I'm kind of confessing what I'm letting myself down. It's almost like I'm denying myself an experience, and I have a lot of kids. I have 5 kids. I have 7 grandchildren, 6 grandchildren, about to have 7. So that's not my excuse, but I would also like them to be comfortable where I've been uncomfortable. So maybe you do this as a family.
Absolutely. So here's the thing. as a world, society has not done a very good job of recognizing people with intellectual disabilities historically, and you hear stories from our parents, when you learn you are having a child with a disability, the things that the doctors tell you, what you are advised to do because there may be a burden. I mean, we institutionalized forever, so they didn't have an opportunity to be with the general public. And then you take a look at formidable years, all right? So we have programs right now, and we work hard at these programs within the schools. All right.
Is that the Unified Champion Schools program?
Right. So Unified Champion Schools program takes regular education kids and special education kids. They put them together during the school day, and they play sports together during the school day. And here's what happens. So actually, I did a podcast with a couple mid-school students the other day, all right? And they were drilling me with these questions. So I turned the table and I asked them questions. And I said, so fellas, tell me, how many birthday parties have you been to in your life? And in all of those birthday parties, was there anyone there who had a disability of any kind, intellectual disability or not? When you hang out with your friends, have you ever invited anyone from your school who is in special education? Have you ever done that? Well, no, they haven't. All right. So this Unified Champion Schools program brings them together through sport, which is a great way to bring people together. Mm-hmm. Everybody, for the most part, can have fun in sport where ability doesn't necessarily matter, all right? So you don't have to be the best. You just have to play with us. And when that happens, they get to know the person, and then they understand the disability a little more. So what is Down syndrome, and how does that show up? What is being on the autism spectrum? And, why are they putting their fingers in their ears? Why is that happening? And, all the differences that come with disability, you learn what those are and why. And then once you have an understanding of that, then you start to really learn about the person. And I just have to tell you, they're hard not to love. They're fun to be with. They're just so refreshing because they don't feel entitled to anything because they've not had that in their life before. Their expectations are far different than ours. When you're not invited and you're not included. I asked an athlete a couple weeks ago who was at a volleyball competition that we had. I didn't really know this guy, but I see him a lot. And I said, so tell me, I said, I don't know you, but I see you a lot. You compete in a lot of sports. I said, I got to ask you this. What would you be doing if you didn't have Special Olympics? And he put his head down and he thought and he hesitated for a while. And then he looked at me, looked dead in my face, and he said, nothing. And I thought, nothing. And I thought, there's days when nothing sounds wonderful to me. I would love to be doing nothing upon occasion. But my whole life of nothing, and that's them. That's a lot of them. They do nothing. And that to me, that's not how we were created to live life.
Randy, Special Olympics also benefits caregivers. I guess I'm specifically thinking about a parent. A child is born, maybe a Down syndrome situation, probably that starts off as terrifying for a parent. But as they grow and they have fellowship with other people, they start to learn there's capabilities. It seems to me Special Olympics sometimes surprises caregivers because they underestimate their children and they see children blossom. Would you agree with that?
I think I have a lot of thoughts about it, and I have to tell you, I can't answer for everybody because I'm not a parent, and I'm not a parent of someone with a disability. All right, so I'm careful about my words here, but what I hear over and over. So first of all, when they are born and they learn their baby has some kind of disability, there's not celebration. Okay. So, and I hear parents tell me, even within the family, aunts and uncles, we're sorry. We're sorry that this happened. So I think you go 9 months, you're having a baby, you're thrilled at the whole thought of it, and you don't get to celebrate. That doesn't seem right to me. All right. So they start with that. And then from that moment on, they're just told everything that this kid is never going to get to do. Well, probably never go to school. Well, probably never read or write. Well, probably never drive. Well, might not ever do this, might not do that. And so when you're told that over and over, after a while, I think the dukes go up, in my opinion. I think it's like, don't tell me that, because they're always fighting for. I mean, special education. We didn't even let these guys in schools up until what? How many years ago? It hasn't been all that long ago. Special education didn't even exist, So these families, and you have to think about it this way. These are families who, unlike our families where you go and when you're 18 years old or a little longer now, you're out the door. These guys are with their families forever. Yes. Right? Unless there's another option for them, And so families become protective. Families defend. Families are looking for other families who have gone through the same things they have. So we've got a great network to help. But I think a lot of times you're right. And what we see in sport, we see our athletes through coaching, through training, we see these athletes do things they've never done before because they're given the opportunity, right? So the opportunity creates possibilities that we can't really know until they have that opportunity. And we see that. We see them, of course, they train, they practice, they have coaches, they get better and better, and they do things that none of us ever thought they'd do. I mean, my goodness, I see that all the time, and these families are like, oh my gosh. But here's something that I love, all right? So we travel around the state for state competitions. We go to Farmington, we go to Las Cruces, we went to Roswell before. We go to places. And when you travel with your team and it's not your mom and your dad, you get to stay in a hotel or a motel with your teammates. All right. So that in itself, parents are nervous about that. Really? Yes. You're going to take him away from us? Mm-hmm. And then when they stay in the hotel, just like the rest of us, they don't go to bed on time. They order pizzas from their rooms. They do things that all of us in our lifetime have gotten the opportunity to do that they never got the opportunity to do. And then here's the cream of it. After every competition, we have a victory dance. All right. So if you want to see participation, every DJ that we bring in to play music, they love us because from the very first drop of the first music, the first song, they don't sit down. They dance. And they dance and they dance and they dance. They dance with other people. They dance by themselves. They dance because they get to socialize in ways that we just take for granted. They don't get to do that. And our dances, I'll tell you what, if you want to have fun, if you just want to come to our dances, just come and sit down. And before long, you're going to get asked to dance and you're going to be on that floor and you're not going to want to sit down either. It's a blast.
I love it. No inhibitions dancing.
No inhibitions at all. You don't have to have rhythm. It doesn't matter what you look like. It's free.
You've talked about maybe volunteering for 12 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I got the sense you may be kind of tempering that because you don't want to give people too much. But I kind of want to push a little bit. Have you seen volunteers that not only have relationships with the athletes, but have been dedicated to the families that you've just described? Mm-hmm. Are these like lifelong kinds of things that you've seen?
Yeah, it is lifelong, to be honest with you. And because it's being engaged and then befriending, and then, once you befriend, families come together. And absolutely, it is a lifelong thing. But I think you have to have a starting point. And it's almost like you're waiting to be invited. So everybody out there, I'm inviting you. Because if I hadn't been invited to welcome 3,000 Special Olympics athletes into the stadium at Iowa State University, if I hadn't been invited, I wouldn't have known. And I wouldn't have. Right? You just have to be invited. And once you're invited, unless you're voluntold by your boss or someone.
And by the way, that's not a bad idea either.
Voluntold works. Voluntold works. But, you have to be willing. Now, here's what people are busy today. Oh my gosh, there's so much going on today. So I think that's part of it. I think we lack, because they're going, how am I going to coach? I can't do one more thing, Well, maybe you can't, but maybe you can. So what I always think, come and volunteer and see. And then depending on how you like that, if it's something that you really like to do and you found benefit in it, you'll do it again. You will do it again. If you come and you don't like it and you have a bad experience, well, you won't do it again. But I really think in our lives, we make choices about the things that we really do. We commit to what we like. And I tend to believe there's a chance that if you do come, you might like it and you might get your kids involved and you might get your family involved. And then there's a whole world of possibilities.
I love that. I'm going to ask you about our whole state. Do you think that New Mexico could become a safe, great place to raise your children, regardless of intellectual abilities? Do you think we can become a great state like that?
Yes. Hands down, yes. And I'll tell you why. Because of our culture here. I really do, I came from the Midwest my whole life. And when I came here and I saw the culture here, what I saw, I loved right away, because for the most part, I think as people, as New Mexicans, we're not a wealthy state. We're not, we don't have a lot of what other states have. We got a lot of land, and we've got people, I think, who tend to be kind of family oriented at their best moments. I really do see that. I see family oriented stuff. Our unified sports programs here, we took our team sports and we unified them. If you came right now and you watched the state competition in Special Olympic, which we play in Farmington, it's unified. You're going to see this. You're going to see families playing together and against each other.
Love it.
That's it. It's families. So how many sports organization can your whole family play and compete in together? And that's what you see. You come to softball, you'll see families. And I just think New Mexico, if we can just exhale and take a look at who we really are, the best of what we are, I think we could lead the way. I'm totally sold on that.
I love that because I don't want to creep up from the bottom of the bad list.
Oh, no,
I want to be at the top of the good list.
Oh, yeah. And I think we're pretty close, to be honest with you. I really do. I think we've got, we've got our things here, no doubt, but we also have our good things here. And those good things have to do with, I think, the cultures that we have here that embrace family. And I love that.
Last call out.
Yeah.
You've got a state games coming up at the end of the month.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have events starting in June, July, August.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the other program, the Unified Champions program.
Yeah.
So how many volunteers do you need?
Well, we counted one time, actually. We had about 6,000 volunteers statewide, and we need all of those.
Okay.
All right. So
and this is from every city in the state.
Yeah, we're in 110 communities in this state.
Okay.
Everything that makes us work, we had about 6,000 people involved in some way for some period of time. Do we need you? Yes, we do. And do we have a specific need right now? I would tend to say we need coaches, assistant coaches, people to work for a few weeks and give yourself to those few weeks to be with our teams and then see how that goes and then decide what you want to do. But yeah, we need help.
And if you'd like to help, call 505-856-0342 or go to SO for Special Olympics, NM.org.
Right.
SONM.org.
That's it.
Randy, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.